I'm really glad to be here. And yes, some of you might know me from my work in the Agile space, and some is like that I've written a bunch of books. And that's, for example, the distributed one. But I don't want to point out all of them, so don't be afraid. But I want to point out my very first one, Agile Software Development in the Large, and that was actually about scaling Agile, about scale teams, about feature teams, and all of that stuff. I published that in 2004, so started writing on it, I think, in 2002. And guess what? Nobody was interested in it. Oh, okay. So I dealt with it. I kept on doing my stuff. My latest book is the one on the top left corner, the what's often referred to as the Bossa Nova book, and a little bit of that also motivated what I'm doing right now. It's kind of a foundation of what I want to present today. So today I want to talk about a topic that's really my passion, it's to my heart. And it is about sustainability. And I said before, well, and next is world peace. And of course, we do have a lot to do here. And I want to point out why that topic is so close to me. I imagine there are similar stories here in the room. I can at least think so. So for me, well, it kind of started. I'm sorry, I'm outing myself as being really old. Back in the 80s, I was protesting in the streets against acid rain and Waldsterben. Some of you might remember that. And now, look at that. So, this is close to where I live. It's called the Harz. Some of the German ones might know it. So it's a great hiking area, but I'm not sure how good you can see that. What you can maybe see there as well is that the forest is really dead. And the latest forest report that was published, I think that was last year, so the forest report for Germany, there they found out and said like 80% of all trees in Germany are damaged. And if I look at the Harz, it often feels like it's 100. So wherever you look, it's a mess. So that's the one thing, which also means, well, back in the 80s, we were not really successful with our protests. We kind of solved maybe one thing, but not others. Another reason why this is so close to my heart is that I'm a passionate scuba diver. And as a scuba diver, I'm really concerned about the various forecasts that are made. So like the one forecast that's made, it's saying that by 2050, there will be more plastic in the sea than fish. I'm not sure how much fun that will be to go scuba diving then. And already by 2030, it's projected that all coral reefs will be damaged. And I think that's too close. So maybe it's better like that. Let's see. Okay, so this is what makes me tick. And for many, many years, I didn't really know how I can combine this passion with my professional life. So there were the book stuff and there was this other stuff. And now since I think it's 5 years, I found a way to combine that. And I want to, kind of share it with you in the hope that you can take something with you and maybe try something. And we all make the world perhaps a better place than it is right now. Maybe one more thing here. So this is it's a typical German thing here. What you see at the top, I actually do have a different education as well next to like working. This is now not good. I just maybe like this. Yeah, I think no. I think it was too close, and so. But okay, sorry. And so this certification that I got many years ago was called Pollution Control Commissioner on Ecological Environmentalism. So I really have to read this because that's Emissionsschutzbeauftragte in German, also not much better. Anyway, so before I want to start into the topic right away, I would like to know from you, how do you think sustainability and your work with less or agile or Scrum, whatever, how these things can be related or how they are related? If you just shout out whatever kind of connection you're seeing. Energy consumption, right? Yeah. What else? Reduction of, say it again. Waste, yeah. Muda, right? Critical thinking. Oh, systemic thinking. Hmm. There's also Lumen, right? Self-sustaining. Responsiveness, yes. Ownership. hmm Maybe one more? Yes. Continuous improvement. What a great kind of final last word for a connection. Thank you so much. Yes. So let's see. So this is definitely all true what you're saying. So there's a connection, but maybe it's still okay. What are we doing with this? And I brought a little agenda with me, which is my favorite agenda that I keep using all the time because it's always true, which goes like what, so what, now what, and with the what, I want to look at some facts and share some facts about that topic. Then the so what is about insights. And the now what, you should be really excited about that. This is what you can do. So these are the things we want to talk about today. And I start with the what. So, well, maybe it was a little bit unfair because I asked, how do you see, what's the connection you're seeing between sustainability and your professional work? So as in less or so. And I didn't give you a definition of sustainability. And let's do this now. No, see, wrong order. First, before I give a definition, I want to kind of say, why is that important? And there are various forecasts that are made, also in IT and in software. And this forecast, well, first of all forecasts are just that. They are forecasts, they are guesstimates, and we never know how it will turn out, right? But the thing is, with this one, when they looked into the energy consumption of IT, they found out that, well, and there are various measures right now, that at the moment we are about 3 to 4% of the overall energy consumption, which is the same percentage like air traffic. Let that sink in. We talk a lot about air traffic. How much are we talking about IT and the footprint? Not so much, maybe. Maybe we should talk more about that. Okay, so this is a forecast, and that forecast says by 2030, it is likely that IT consumes up to 21% of the overall energy consumption. And if we are not starting to do anything about that, then this is very likely. So I think we have a job. Okay, I see people nodding. That's good. Okay, now back to what I first promised to bring, a definition about sustainability, because this is what we are talking about. And the first one is a very basic one, and it is the very first definition. It's called the Brundtland definition from Ms. Brundtland from the United Nations, who created a report many years ago, and there she came up with that definition with her group, of course, with her team, which is basically saying we shouldn't live at the cost of future generations. You probably have heard that in various ways. So this is one definition. I want to share another definition also by the United Nations. This is that one. You might have seen that as well at some places. So whenever there is like a COP, so the climate panel meeting, wherever, in Paris, in Glasgow, in Copenhagen, in wherever they are meeting. And these are 17 sustainable development goals. And to be very honest, so these are all around for quite some time, but to be honest, with my work, I have really difficulties to kind of make those real. And it starts with like the Brundtland definition. It's very, very broad. So I'm not sure what advice that gives. Then the 17 SDGs, they're so fine-grained. I don't know, really. And then, well, lucky me, I'm living in Germany. And the software that I'm writing together with my clients, I am not sure how I can build zero hunger therein, like the second SDG there on the top. Or one of my favorites, 14, life below water. I think that's important, but I'm not sure how that connects to my world. So I'm going with the different definition which sits in between. And that comes with various names. It always with threes, three pillar model or triple bottom line, and so various things with threes. And it kind of combines the SDGs and makes them, I think, more tangible, at least for me. And we are starting with the first column. That's the social pillar. And as you can see, the social is about people. It's about equity, livability, health. And I tried already to bring a little translation to our world, which is also diversity, safety, security, privacy. It's also accessibility. So this is all the social pillar, and maybe this way it tells more about your work as well. Then the second pillar is the thing we often have at first in mind when we talk about sustainability, which is environment, the planet. And what comes with that is stuff like what's called green software. You might have heard of that. Or also that we are looking at the CO2 reduction, and more to this also later, definitely, when we talk about what to do. And the third pillar, that's about the economy. It's about prosperity, and so sustainable economies, but also responsible products. And I will give you examples for all of these three pillars right away. However, I want to ensure that you understand sustainability is really where everything overlaps. So the idea is to focus on all three pillars, so it's a holistic thing. Who said that before? Like holistic, systemic, and all of that. So this is part of it, right? Because it's too easy, and it doesn't help us. If we, for example, focus on the environment at the cost of social, of the people, and we do stuff like that for too many years now, I think it's time to do it differently. Okay, so let's look into some examples that hopefully speak more to what you are doing. We start again with social. That's an example that I found on long ago Twitter. I'm not using it anymore. Sorry, but it doesn't exist anymore, so that's maybe why. Okay, but it was always a great source for stuff. Anyway, so this was Shirley Wu, and complaining that she wanted to register and create an account, but she couldn't because the system required her last name to be at least 3 characters long. This is not inclusive. It also is questionable how accessible it is for people and all of that. And, you know, the thing is, I'm 100% sure the people who created that system, they didn't think about, oh, we want to exclude Shirley Wu. I don't think so. It's more that what I see a lot of times in our world is that the teams are too homogeneous, and therefore we only think kind of alike, and we don't think whatever else is possible there. And I want to share already one thing that you can do, and I hope we come back to this also later. But if you are working with personas, I know some people do, some don't, some like it, some not. But if you work with personas, which is I think kind of a good way of thinking about who is our target audience and how can we create the system so it really is addressed to our target audience. At times, think about just the opposite persona. Maybe it's not that dude, white, old, maybe young, whatever. But maybe it's someone completely different, and then see what the system does. And I'm not saying that this way you want to forget about your target audience. It's still important. It's important to have a focus, really. But you also want to ensure not to exclude people. And looking at personas can help you. And of course, having a diverse team helps you as well. Different example, environment. Well, back to the United Nations, they are doing a lot of stuff. So every 5 years, they are creating an e-waste monitor. And the last one they published was in 2020, which means it looks at the year 2019, because it was published in 2020. And there they found out like one thing, that the electronic waste has increased by 21% over the 5 years before. And then what you can also see, it's now as much as 5,400 Eiffel Towers. That's quite a lot. And now you might wonder, oh, why is Jutta sharing that? I am not really in hardware, maybe sometimes, but not really. You know, well, let me put this the other way around. When do you buy a new phone? And I bet most of the time when the OS is not supported anymore, when the apps are not working nice anymore, then it's probably time to buy a new phone. This means most often it is software that's pushing people to throw away hardware, to create e-waste and buy new stuff. So it is, again, our responsibility to ensure that also old devices are usable, at least in our bubble, in our world, for the systems we are creating. So this is something that we can keep in mind and can do. Now, now I tell you where I'm from, no, where I'm living. So I said already I am based in Germany, and I live in an area that's, well, maybe also called Volkswagen County. Okay, and here's my example for economy, for responsible products. Remember Dieselgate? This was software. It was software that created that problem. And again, well, first of all, there were software developers creating that system that pollutes the air, which damages health, and so on. However, I don't think they did it by thinking, oh, we want to pollute air. I'm pretty sure that was a consequence of the context they are in. Again, we are talking about systems here. So, and probably the problem is more in the systems than in the individuals who created that software. But still, it's a good example for maybe it's software, but not a responsible product. And maybe everything worked fine, all tests were green. Well, doesn't help. Okay. So, yeah, I would like you to do something. I would like you to check out this QR code. And it is about, well, let's put it this way. Very often we look at our, well, not sure if very often, but there are a lot of websites that help us to look at our carbon footprint, where we say like, this is how we live, this is how we heat, this is where our energy comes from, and we have, I don't know, 0 cars or five cars or bikes or something, and then our carbon footprint is calculated. All of these leave out what this one does. This one looks at the digital carbon footprint only. And while you are trying and playing with it, which I think you should do, I also want to share it here. So you can also follow along here. And you can see, for example, well, you have a smartphone, and if you click on it, then you can also edit and say, how many smartphones do you have? How much do you use them? How long are you using your phone? When do you throw it away? And I'm not now like editing like everything, but just doing like a little bit so we know, well, we have a laptop, we have a monitor. I don't know, what do we have? A router. What else would you like us to have? Well, I still have a printer. And I do have mobile internet as well. I do video conferences and sometimes video streaming and so on. So you can play around with this. I don't want to now enter all the details, but it's kind of interesting to find out what is our digital carbon footprint, because that's also existing. And keep the thing in mind, the longer we are using all those tools, gadgets, the better it is. And perhaps I share this right away before I forget later on. This is something that has changed over the years. So if we look at kind of the gadgets we had in the past, so really way back in the past, which are still around, like all the whiteware stuff, like washing machines, fridges, and stuff like that, even cars. For all of these products, the truth is that the biggest part of the energy consumptions happens during operations. This has changed now with the more digital equipment. So for a phone, the biggest part of the energy consumption, the biggest carbon footprint, or let's put it this way, 80% of the carbon footprint is created in production. And so if you think of, I don't know, charging your phone with solar energy, which I do sometimes, it's minor. It's not of interest. That's what of interest is. Use it for as long as possible. That's a huge difference. And what I don't know actually is that there is probably a fine line between when does a fridge become a digital gadget, because we also know like cars are more digital things than anything else anymore, and I don't know where the point there is. However, so the phones and stuff, they have their carbon footprint in production. Other like older things during consumption, during operations. Okay, just like for you, maybe to play around with the tools you are having. Let's see and go back. We have been here. And I should do that. Okay. This is where we were, and we go on. Oops. This is not what I wanted. Yes. Okay, so what? Maybe another excursion here. And let me see who knows Kneffin here in the room? That's what I kind of thought. Who hasn't seen that before? There are a few. Good, good. And still, for the few who have not seen it, probably you should talk to other people on your table and ask them for more details. I really want to go briefly over it because, well, there's time for other stuff here. So Kneffin is one way of looking at a situation of your context and making sense of what to do when you want to change something or something is changed. And I know this is a very, very basic summary. And if we go around here, then the easiest situation is like your lower right corner. The situation is very clear. So we know where we are, we know where we want to go, and we just go there. So one of example could be you see an empty bottle lying there and you say, well, I'm just picking it up and putting it in the recycle bin. This is straightforward. There's not much in between. It's called also best practices. It is something everyone can do. It is like you see it, sense it, categorize, and you do. Now, on the upper right corner, which is more like a complicated space where the thing is, it's more experts who do that. And you're an expert. We are all experts in at least something, more or less in several things at most times. So what we do there is, first of all, we kind of, we need to analyze what is the situation. And then based on the analysis, we decide what to do next, and we know where we want to go, but we probably need to adapt all the time. So we make like a step, and then we check, are we going in the right direction? And if yes, then we do the next step, and we check again, are we going in the right direction? And so on. There's no straightforward way. Then the complex area, which is actually something where you can say cause and effect are not directly related. It's often a thing that in hindsight you say, because we did that, this is why we have now this result. But if you do that again, you probably will not end at the same point. Yeah. And in that space, what we do is we probe, we experiment, then we sense, and then we respond. Then there's chaotic. And you know what? We start right away with that. Chaotic could be something, your house is on fire. There is no much making a plan and calling out, well, you're responsible for that, and can you take this task, and who's coordinating here? If the house is on fire, we act, right? It's not any kind of planning something. And I brought this to you not because I want to share Kneffin really, but to make one thing clear about sustainability. Some of you might remember Greta Thunberg said in Davos, I want you to panic. The house is on fire. So that were more or less her words. The problem is with like saying what she said was we are in the chaotic space. And it's kind of true. We really should get our act together and do stuff, right? Yet on the other hand, if we think we are in that space, then, well, it could be we are paralyzed, which is happening sometimes in chaos. And it could also be that, well, we act in a way that isn't helpful. And then on the other hand, what we see in governments, what's going on, at least here in Germany, in the EU a lot, is that we seem to understand that the sustainability climate crisis is a complicated thing because there are long-term plans. 2050, we want to be whatever, and then 2030 maybe, and so on. And the problem here is things are changing all the time. You know, if we now follow a path, we plan to 2050 and we follow that path, and then in 2050 we figure, oh, that was not it. That's a bit late. It's not a good idea. So, but we really should understand this whole problem is something that sits in the complex space. And the only thing that helps us is to have a scientist approach where we come up with hypotheses, we do like little probes, we try something out, we look if this is helpful or not, and next thing. And you know what? You are all experts for that. This is what we do, right? Isn't it? This is our normal life. In software, we often have that thing. See, this is where we can help. Very good. Oh, I think what I want to do is this. Okay, so Agile sustainability. We differentiate in two ways, like sustainability in and by Agile. And what I mean with that is, first of all, sustainability by Agile is that we use all that knowledge, like how do we act in complex space? We do these little probes. We learn as we go. We correct. We have this, well, you know, the acronym of FAIL, first attempt in learning. This is kind of our DNA. This is what we will use. This is good. So we can use all of that to help increase sustainability or fight climate crisis and all of that. And I think I have some examples. So one example, no, they're both, I think they are both actually in the social pillar of sustainability. So Africa Agility is a non-profit organization where Agile people act as mentors and help mainly, I think it's girls in Africa, to get knowledgeable in software development and therefore can make a living. And people do this around the world and support those young girls. Then we have Hack Your Future. There I have, well, first of all, Hack Your Future is also a nonprofit, and this has the idea of working with refugees and ensuring that they can improve their IT software skills and show them so that they can get a job. And a friend of mine, and maybe some of you know her, Nicole Bellilos, she kind of worked as a Scrum Master for one of the teams and helped them to do exactly that. Very nice. Another example, last example for myself, like last year, I worked together with Steve Hollier for a nonprofit, also in the climate sector. And we used, you know, all that stuff that we use all the time, like story mapping, event storming, open spaces, to help them to make their next step. We can do that. Then there is another area, sometimes I call this is the homework we have to do. And this is sustainability in Agile. So we should look at sustainability as a guideline for everything that we are doing in our work. While we are developing software or whatever we are doing, we always should think about how we can do this so that we definitely, well, will not decrease sustainability like the Dieselgate or something. And one example could be that we think of sustainability as a quality attribute so that it's part of the definition of done. That we always, when we deliver a new story, a new feature, whatever, that we also look at, oh, has the carbon footprint changed? Are we now consuming more energy than we did before? Maybe we should consider to rebuild that feature and do it differently. Okay, and I guess you have all waited for that. So you had already a few ideas here. But we are now looking into, this is what you can do. I hope I can make it as concrete as possible. And I promised I want to come back to the personas. And the personas really help us to make our systems more accessible. And what I learned from a colleague of mine, David Dame, he's working for Microsoft. He is working with persona spectrums. And that was an eye-opener for me, and I want to share it with you. So again, this is from David. The thing is that we are all temporarily able or not. This is how he looks at it, and I think he's so right. And so a permanent thing would be, what do we look at? Let's say we look at hearing. because I can touch here. So hearing might be a deaf person, cannot hear, that's permanent. But that can be also a temporary thing because we have an ear infection and so can't hear. Or we are in a very noisy environment and therefore can't hear. And maybe the system that thinks of we are kind of accessing it through like verbal anything doesn't work because of those things, right? And this is true really for all of that. You can see that like blind, cataract, or distracted driver. Also what I thought is interesting, like do I have only one arm, or maybe it's injured, or maybe I'm carrying a baby and that's why I can only use one arm. There are all kinds of reasons, and we should think of that really more of, well, maybe having systems that are more accessible that helps us all. And that's cool. Okay, so this is one example. Another example, oh, and now I'm not sure if I now lose all the friends that I made already. Okay, let's try. Stories. Oh, actually, I'm also not a fan of the Connextra format. And I probably say that and have a disclaimer and so on. Anyway, so there are stories, and a story is whatever. So we say somebody wants something for a reason, and also maybe the somebody tells us this way also how we can measure it. And if we use the Connextra format or anything else, I really don't care. It doesn't matter. I just use it here on the slide. Actually, I hardly have used it myself. Anyway, and if you use it and you are happy with it, that's great too. My point is here, maybe we should start think of stories in a completely different way. Well, not completely different, but in an additional way. And the additional way is we should think of every story about what's the impact of it. What's the impact on the environment, on the social aspect, maybe on the economic aspect in terms of like, yeah, is it a responsible product? Does it help the world? Maybe not. So, and again, you can use a different format, but think about the impact. And I have an example, which is also not super good, I admit, but still, it's an example. So it says, as a designer, I want to reduce the amount of font types so the page performance will increase for users and pages will be more digestible, with the impact of reduced CO2 emissions because of less data transfer. That looks nice. And see, it's not about the form. You don't have to use Connextra format for that. Yeah, now, ooh, I'm missing a slide. This is very bad. Do I have this? This is too difficult for a flip chart. I'm sorry. Here I have it. This is good. Okay, I found it. Okay, so you might think fonts. This is not important. So here's a guy, and I can't pronounce the name. I try still. Jutta Polish professor. I should have asked you. Jutta. Okay. And he did that experiment where he built a simple website, very simple, and tried different fonts and looked at what does it do in terms of CO2 emissions, and he calculated it up for per month and per year. And you see the difference that system fonts are way better than self-hosted fonts, and they're better than Google fonts. And now you still might think, oh, okay, that's not a high number. What is that? It's maybe too minor. But you know what? We have 1.11 billion websites. And then maybe it makes a difference. There's so much stuff out there. And yes, most of them are inactive, meaning people are not interacting with them, but they are still there. They are still backed up and everything. So they are still creating their own noise. So this is like one of the things you can think of. And again, it was more an example for the impact and not so much like it should be really fun also. Okay, different topic. Remember the e-waste monitor? So supporting older hardware, this is also something that we can do. We can look at this in a better way. And the thing that I want to suggest here is using sustainability toggles, where we look at what kind of client are we having here. And then depending on the client, we have a responsive design that ensures that only those features that are working for that client are really available and the others are deactivated. And maybe you, well, most likely you work with feature toggles already. And so this is just a different way. And this is kind of, I would think, a known chart for feature toggles and what they mean. And I don't want to go through everything, but just so give you an idea. So toggles always, what we look at is, that's the y-axis. How long is that toggle present, available, delivered, active? And then on the x-axis, how dynamic is it? Like, does it change only like when we deploy, or is it changing all the time? And to look at maybe two, three extremes, like the release toggles are a thing where we have a story that's not completely finished, or we discover like that the tests are not passing or anything. So we use a feature toggle so that story will not be accessible for the user, right? And still the system is deployed, and probably this will be perhaps in the days ranges or weeks ranges, because with the next release, that story will be complete and it will be activated and not toggled away. Then another example, which is way more dynamic, which would be like experiment toggles, classic A/B testing. We often do that, right? Like user experience, we want to know, does this work better or that? And this means, well, often they're in the mid-range, like weeks, maybe months, that we try that out, but it's very dynamic. It's like for every user, it's different because we want to see the difference. And now what I'm looking at here is the thing you see at the top, your right upper corner, which are the permission toggles. And you know those two. So Jutta logs in and the system says, oh, this is Jutta. She better shouldn't access this and that and that. So this is all deactivated because my credentials are not really high. And this is exactly what sustainability toggles kind of do as well. So they look at the individual client and say, what kind of hardware is that? What kind of features are supported by that hardware? And therefore, still that the person sitting in front of that client can use the system, but maybe not all features, similar to like me with the bad credentials, with the login that doesn't allow me to use everything. And here it depends on the client. The client, well, says, okay, well, I can only do this and that because I'm old. Kind of the thing. So this is probably, I hope in the future, these are toggles that live for a long, long time. I really, fingers crossed, hope so, because we stop pushing out hardware. We ensure that our systems are running on also older devices this way. And it's very dynamic because it changes with each request. What's possible here? Okay, then I want to look at energy-aware operations. So it starts that we need to understand better when do we have an energy mix that's renewable and make use of that. So we adjust what we are doing to the mix of energy, and this depends on like operations that can be run asynchronously. It depends on, for example, also tests that we run them at the time when the energy mix is green and not when it's based on fossil fuels. And again, it starts with, we should be aware of that. When is a good time for that? This is our job, I think. Then what else? Data centers. Data centers also use a lot of energy, and this is one projection from, was it the EU, I believe, kind of where the idea was how much we think, or the forecasters, data centers will use in terms of energy in the future. And there are various scenarios, and maybe it gets better, probably it gets worse over time. The thing is here, well, first of all, of course, you can kind of ask and look, where is your cloud provider? What does it do? However, what I really want to get at is there are now possibilities for you to decide. And for example, Google has a region picker. And look at that. You can now say, lower carbon footprint, it's important for me. Or what you have done maybe in the past, I'm not saying you, but probably what has been done in the past, look at the price or latency and stuff like that. But you can also use now sustainability as a criteria for deciding on a region where your cloud should resist, where your data centers are. And so there's more and more happening here. I think we are doing something else now. I want you again to do something. I would like to know, where are we standing? So what this is, it's an assessment for teams to look at what are we doing in terms of sustainability? And I want to invite you to answer those statements, and then we look at the data together. And I say more once some of you have filled in the data. So it's like 12 statements, I believe. And I hope you will answer them. Let's see. And I'm waiting till a few data points are in, and then I'm sharing. And for the ones who are not answering the statements, you will see them right away when I share the results. We have now 24 data points. Okay, we are getting somewhere. I guess we see already something. So maybe I do a last refresh. Yes. And 45, I see. Okay. And so, can you read this? Maybe like that. Is this kind of visible in the back? Yes, I see you nodding. This is good. So what we see here is social, you scored with 3.89. 5 was the highest. Like that was like it's all true. Economic 391. 391, yes. So about the same. They're kind of the highest here. We have environmental. Well, there's quite some stuff to do. Holistic as well. Let us take a look at the social. There are various ways how you can look at them. And if we look at those, we see like how those individual statements were answered, like the discrimination, disrespecting or targeting of team members, that was scored very high. What was that? 432. Then 405 was we continuous work to prevent bad actors. And then what's kind of lacking behind is accessibility. To be very honest, it's kind of what I see a lot. It seems accessibility is still something we need to focus on more. We are not that good at it, but it's on its way. We are kind of good in the area of privacy and also on like inclusion. These are topics that are with us for at least 10 years. And 10 years ago, we wouldn't have scored that high. And this actually gives me a lot of hope that the same will happen with all the environmental aspect. So let's go and take a look at those. So environmental, we said. Let's look here. Oh, the 216, that was the team understands the environmental impact of the product. And well, we will look into the details right away. But the thing is, I wouldn't be surprised if you kind of say, never thought about it. I don't really know. Maybe we do this. Maybe we do it unconsciously. I have no idea. What about this? Team monitors hardware utilization of the product, both in use as well as while idle. Well, maybe we also haven't thought about it. But perhaps if you now have answered that, maybe now you think of it. And perhaps you start asking this. The energy being used in the office is renewable. I see this more and more that this is scoring higher, which is great. Yet it also means that's a point that doesn't have to do anything with the value creation of the team, right? It is something the company does. So I said we also want to maybe look in a way of like, what can we learn from this? Okay, so interesting. So here we see nobody has answered kind of the average value. We have a lot that say like it's more false than true, or it is false that we understand the environmental impact. We have a few people who say, oh, it's more true than false. Very good. So the thing is, if you're doing this with your team, you can start having a conversation on these things and start looking at what can we do to make a difference. And I really want to invite you to do that. So this, what you have seen right now is the reduced assessment. So we have only the 12 statements. In total, we have 44. And it has been published under Creative Commons, so you're very much invited to just use it with your teams, and hopefully you start having a different conversation. And this, oh, no, this is not what I want to do. See, I don't see anything. This is my problem. And here we go, I think. And so again, I want, oh, here you see also that link. I also have it on my closing slide for that assessment. But I really want to invite you to try that out, to use some of the things you have heard today and start changing your conversations within your work, with your teams, for really increasing sustainability. I think we do have stuff to do here. So, thank you. Danke.
Thank you so much.
So maybe first a bit about those links. So here, this is the one about this assessment. Again, it's Creative Commons, so you can just use it. Then we have a LinkedIn group. There is that initiative you have mentioned. So please come join. We need everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we have time for questions.
Absolutely, we do. Thank you so much for working with us here.
Wasn't personal carbon footprint invented by British Petroleum to guilt trip people versus guilt tripping companies?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I, you know, yes, there's a personal responsibility, but maybe you are more talking about our responsibilities as people in those nasty companies.
Absolutely, I'm completely with you. This is actually the reason why I really want to focus more on what we can do in our work than what we do on our personal level, which is typically the thing you hear more. Whatever, how you should live and how you drive or not and fly or not and blah, blah, blah. And well, I do kind of a lot of things, but I also think this is not anything where I have a lever, but the leverage comes when I bring it to my work. This makes a systemic difference. And you're completely right. I'm also not happy with the term. I still use it because it's just a term that's known by most people. And absolutely right. So it was really BP who said, like, well, we want to be the individual is responsible for that and not the industry who created all the mess. Yes.
Is there addition is there's a list of programming languages and which programming language actually uses the least, the most energy. I think that's quite a big impact.
Yes.
And so I guess quite many people saw that list. It's really good. So Python is pretty bad.
Very true.
Yeah.
That is true. And the thing is, it doesn't have the same impact as stuff that's really going directly on the hardware, like things of ensuring that devices are used longer. That has a bigger impact, or also picking the regions for your cloud has a different impact than the programming language. It's more, I would say, kind of when we have solved all the other things, then we can start looking at the programming language, because it doesn't make that much difference. A tiny one, but it's a good point. Yeah.
How do you convince a company that wants to make a profit to reduce waste, like the phone company you talk about? Like, how do you convince a company of investing more into making sure that the software is more sustainable, and by that selling less phones?
So various things here. It starts with the EU is, I'm not sure if you are in the EU with the country you're from, but the EU is really enforcing companies to report on their sustainability efforts. And I'm pretty sure at the beginning, so this came into place this year in January. So it's kind of new, and people are still finding out what is it that we are doing, what are we reporting on, and how, and so on. So this will change definitely over the years. But what companies are doing right now is more stuff like that thing that was high, perhaps using renewable energy in the office. That's something that gives us a plus. Or maybe we give up on company cars, that gives us a plus, and so on. But I bet very soon we are done with all that. And then we are coming to the area of value creation, where things really need to be different. That's the one thing. The other thing is that more and more markets are demanding that, clients are demanding that. And my, guess, probably it's more a hope, is that with these companies that are going ahead, that they show what's possible, that then the others are following. So kind of what happened when, I don't know how to pronounce it, like the O3, ozone, is that? How is that pronounced? Where we had this problem, I think it was even Greenpeace who first showed how we can build a fridge without the FCKW. And then others saw, well, that's possible, and we still can make a profit, and therefore we do it. And for example, my phone is a Fairphone, a Dutch phone. Very good, can only recommend it. And they make money, but of course not as much as like Apple or anyone. But what we can see already, that they are starting looking into this as well. And the third thing that comes to my mind is that a lot of these things that I'm saying, like this is what you can do, is that it actually helps, at least from the software perspective, to make the software better. It's more accessible, it's more performant, it uses less memory, and so on. So it all has that thing. It's kind of a win-win. It's not so much like, if we invest in sustainability, we don't have that money and we will lose all that. So this is not true. But yes, for hardware, it's a bit different. And what I assume is it's going more in the direction of pay-per-use and on-demand and stuff like that, which has already started anyway. And this is me saying that I'm looking at my crystal ball here, right? Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking us on this journey. And yeah, give Jutta a last hand and applause for these insights.